I'm LaRain, the founder and director of Atlanta National Hypnotherapy Institute, a state-authorized school, and Atlanta West Hypnotherapy Clinic. The school has been in practice for 12 years, and the clinic has been in practice for a little over 34 years. I'd like to tell you a little bit about hypnotherapy and how it works. Probably the best place to start is when you were a baby. Because when you were a baby, your mind was strictly subconscious. Negatives and positives just drop right down here on the subconscious level. Eventually, they become your life scripting. Now, these negatives and positives, they are accepted as truth. Let's suppose that when you were a baby, your mother gave you a bite of ice cream. Now, I would think that would be a good imprint. Maybe the baby touches the stove or something that's a little bit too warm. That would be a negative imprint. And these negatives and positives, they're accepted as truth. Now, by the time that child is 8 years old, they begin to develop the critical part of the brain. But before that, their mind is just subconscious. But when they begin to develop the critical part of the brain, somewhere between the ages of 8 and 12, they begin to ask more questions. They're not quite as vulnerable. They're not quite as gullible. But the critical part of the brain isn't very strong yet because it's just beginning to develop. Now, by the time that child is a teenager, the critical part of the brain still isn't very strong. Now, if you combine the fact that critical brain is not very strong with the need for peer approval and acceptance, it can get that teenager into trouble. Most parents have witnessed, to some degree, that the teenage time is a very suggestible time. If the teenager drinks alcohol or takes drugs, it damages critical brain, and it may not get strong till even in the 20s. But even in the 20s, even after it does get strong, there are a lot of things that can overload the critical part of the brain, and they're called message units that are coming into the brain. And they're coming in. Some experts say that there's something like 2 million message units coming into our brain every second. Now, these come from 4 different sources. They come from our physical body. Pain is a big one. They come from our conscious mind as we try to reason things out, make sense of it, detailed thinking. They come from our environment, all the thousands of things we deal with every day, with our partner, at work, at home. Probably the biggest source of message units comes from the subconscious, because the critical part of the brain is constantly trying to hold down all of your insecurities. Your subconscious mind, probably the reason it's the strongest, is because everything you've ever learned, heard, said, did, read, experienced is there. Your genetic heritage, everything is there, along with all of your insecurities. So, these message units are coming into your brain. Now, the only way that you get rid of them, actually there's 2 ways that you get rid of them. One is in the sleep state. When you go to sleep at night, it takes 8 hours of sleep to get rid of 16 hours of message units. When you go to sleep at night, you shouldn't be, it's best not be playing on television or something when you're trying to sleep, because the brain needs quiet. It's actually downloading all of the message units from the day before. So when you go to sleep, the critical part of the brain here relaxes. The message units drop down. They go to wherever they're supposed to go and be stored in the brain. And then others are vented out in your early morning dreams. Now, if that dream concerns you, it was frightening or you're concerned about it, and you take it back in and you think, I wonder what that means, and you take it back in, then your subconscious mind continues to try to vent it out, either literally or symbolically, until you let it go, until you release it. Now, the other way that message units are released is when you go into the hypnotic state. Because in the hypnotic state, critical brain is bypassed, and the suggestions drop right down into the subconscious mind. What a hypnotherapist does is they change the way your subconscious mind associates and identifies with the past. So now, your subconscious mind, instead of working against you, it works for you. Did you make New Year's resolutions? How many of them did you keep? If you kept some of them, good for you. But research shows that most people don't keep their New Year's resolutions, so why not? Those were things you wanted to accomplish, right? Well, the reason why you didn't is because you made up your mind here on the conscious level. And your conscious mind is 1 to 12%. That's your logic, reason, and your willpower. But the subconscious part of the mind is 88 to 99%. It handles all automatic things, it associates, it identifies, handles your imagination and your expectations. So when you made those resolutions, when you decided to make those changes, you meant it when you said it. But then you got into a situation that triggered your subconscious back into action. And the next thing you know, you were back there at square one again, because the subconscious said, wait a minute, I don't identify with that new behavior. That's the reason that hypnotherapy is faster and usually more effective than many other kinds of methods, because we change the way your subconscious mind associates and identifies. So when a person says, I'm not going to drink alcohol again, I want to stop, or they say, I want to be more motivated in my business, I want to be more patient, tolerant, I don't want to get upset in traffic, I want to stop smoking, they always mean that when they say it. But then when they get into a situation, they're back to square one again. And hypnotherapy is a very positive way of changing that. Now, we work with what we say is emotional suggestible people. And all that means is left brain dominant individuals. Now when you think of emotional, you think of someone walking around with their emotions on their sleeve, right? But that's not what it means in hypnotherapy. What it means in hypnotherapy is that they hide their emotions. So when you've seen a little bit of how they feel, there's a whole lot that you haven't seen. Your suggestibility is the way that you learn, the way that you process information in your mind. The emotional, they look away from you often when you talk to them. They often have a space around them. They don't want anyone in their space or in their face. When you talk to them, and you're looking right directly at them, they often look away from you, especially if you're talking about them. They tend to be more analytical. They often pick out jobs that they can use that analytical ability with. Now, the other one we work with is the physicals, or the right brain individuals. And these people here, they don't have a space around them. Those people, the right-brained individuals, they look right at you. They move closer to you. They become very animated when they're talking about something that is of interest to them. At a party, they might be the butterfly greeting everybody and very, very friendly. With this left brain person, you probably see them back in the corner talking to someone that they're comfortable with. So they're very different. But there are hundreds and hundreds of degrees of physical and emotional suggestibility. And what I'm describing to you is high on the scale. That would be very high. As you come down the scale, those left brain people become more comfortable with groups. If they're high on the scale, they really are uncomfortable with groups. They don't want to stand up and give a presentation. They don't want to do a lecture. But as they come down the scale, their comfort levels get a bit better. And the same with physicals. As they come down the scale, like if they're 60%, they get in your face less, they interrupt less. The physical has, they really relate to that need for approval and acceptance. They like that. So, but as they come down the scale, that's not so strong. Now, in the hypnotic state, even the suggestions have to be given differently. In hypnosis, we have to talk to the left brain dominant individual, the emotional suggestible, with inferences. And they often have delayed reactions, not always, but often. They might go for 3-4 days and not be doing any better, and all of a sudden something happens and it triggers out the suggestion. And then they begin to notice the changes. That's not always true, but sometimes that does happen. With the physicals, they often leave here and the suggestions are very strong, often right to begin with. We put a suggestion in, and all suggestions depreciate. So let's suppose I put the suggestion in, I put it into here, depreciates to here. I put it in again, and it depreciates to here, and to here, and finally, I have to go a little bit past, so that when that person depreciates, they're not going to return to their old behavior. So one of the things that we strive for is to make the suggestions permanent, and where they can truly make a change in the person's life. You know, it is amazing. Your subconscious mind is awesome. It's taken in everything that you see, that you hear. Everything is there. Do you remember a time that you met someone and there was no reason for you to dislike them, but maybe you disliked them and you didn't know why? Well, your subconscious mind was picking up on things. It picks up on a lot of things, as I was saying. 2 million message units coming into the brain every second. Your conscious mind only picks up on a little bit of that. Maybe your subconscious mind was identifying with an expression or something that someone else had that you knew in the past. But then as you get to know the person, you might find out that they're really quite phenomenal. So our subconscious mind affects us in many ways. Like when you make that decision that you're going to change something, and then the next thing you know, you're doing it again. Your subconscious is very powerful because it controls 80 to 99% of everything you do. There's another type of suggestibility, and they're called somnambulists. And we say they're 50-50s. They have equal input from the left and the right side of the brain. These are the people that you often see stage performers call up on stage. I went to one once with my son, and the hypnotist asked everyone to throw their wallets on stage. Now, I wouldn't do that, and I hope you wouldn't do that, but they did it. When they went up to get their wallets, of course, he knew who they were. And he still had to send some back because they weren't deep enough all on their own. The hypnotist might rub their arm or brush their hair back. And the somnambulist in the audience will rub their arm, brush their hair back, but they're unaware of it. They're very suggestible. There's no trick to it. That person is in deep environmental hypnosis before they ever walked in the building, before they ever met the hypnotist. So what a hypnotherapist does is we block them so they're not quite so suggestible to everything in their life. Now they estimate there's about 140 levels of hypnosis. And we say we work with somewhere between 7 and 12 levels. Let me tell you what you experience in those levels. In some levels of hypnosis, you're more alert, you're more aware. So cars in the street, the sound of your hypnotherapist's voice, the receptionist talking out in the waiting room, the phone ringing, any of those things can seem louder to you. It isn't that anything's louder, it's just that you're more aware, you're more alert. Now other levels, you feel a heaviness in your arms perhaps, maybe your feet, maybe your whole body. Other levels, you get a lightness in perhaps your arms or your legs or your whole body. I don't know why, but the emotionals tend to feel the lightness. If they're very high emos, they often feel the lightness. And those right-brained individuals feel the heaviness. In some levels, you feel like you can just open your eyes and walk out, but you don't want to. Other levels, you try to listen to what the hypnotherapist is saying to you, but you won't be able to do it. Your mind will drift off onto other things completely unrelated. Then you'll come back and you'll hear her again. In other levels, you drop down past the hypnotherapist's voice. And that's when people come out of hypnosis and they say, you know, I went to sleep. Well, they didn't go to sleep. The brain patterns are different. They just drop down past your voice. Now, at one time they thought that this very deep level was the best level. They thought that suggestions didn't work well unless you were in that deep level. But we now know that that's not true. In fact, it's the other way around. We don't know why, but let's take weight. Weight works best in a light state. Alcohol, when I'm taking someone off alcohol, that works best in a medium state. The only thing that we find that deep level is really good for is reinforcing what we have done up above. Now on your first session especially, your hypnotherapist is going to want you to hear every word that she's saying to you. But sometimes it's so relaxing and so comfortable and peaceful that people just want to go deeper past your voice. So if your hypnotherapist has to bring you up, they will probably count up to 2 or 3. In the hypnotic state here, in the office with your hypnotherapist, 0 represents deep hypnotic sleep. 5 represents wide awake, refreshed, alert, feeling wonderful with a sense of well-being. So your hypnotherapist, if you go too deep and she's not ready for you to go deep, or doesn't want you to at all, she may say, move in your state up now. 1, 2, 3, and she'll tell you to hold your depth at 3. And you will lighten your state and hear her voice. Now the hypnotic state is extremely relaxing and comfortable, and it's healthy. You know, it's amazing. We get people with high blood pressure, and they haven't even told us. And they'll come back sometimes and say, you know what, my blood pressure has been doing really, really well. And one of the reasons is because they're so calm, so relaxed, and so in control. Now we work with all kinds of problems. We work with children and we work with adults. Some problems are easier than others, such as stress. That's extremely easy to work with. Alcohol, taking people off alcohol, is easier than smoking. We work with study habits, career motivation, public speaking, sales, companies with employee motivation. We work with companies, management, learning to talk to their employees and other people in the way that they learn and process information. We work with many problems that that have not responded to other therapies successfully. We work with relationships that are based on relationship strategies. We work with children, bedwetting, school problems, just many things. Those are just a few of the things that we work with. Now, your hypnotherapist is going to come and get you in a few moments. You are always aware in the hypnotic session, the hypnotic state. Today, you've probably never been here before or met your hypnotherapist before. If you haven't, your fear of loss of control might be kind of high because you're not sure what to expect. Your subconscious mind doesn't know what to expect, and so therefore your defense mechanisms are very high. But after the second session, or on the second session rather, when you come in for your second session, the fear of loss of control disappears because your subconscious says, oh, I know what's going to happen now. But if we run into fear, not fear, but resistance, if we run into resistance, that's usually on the second or third session. And that, once again, is because your subconscious mind knows what's going to happen. And it says, wait a minute, I happen to like that chocolate cake. I'm not going to let you take that away from me. And if that happens, we just plow through it and go right ahead. So that's why the resistance comes up the second or third session. But if it happens, like I said, we just plow through it, go ahead, and help you reach your goals, whatever they happen to be. So enjoy your session, and it was nice explaining this to you, and you have a great day.